It's time for Market Explainer, your number one business news podcast. Hosted by Danny and the big man. And it starts right now.
Before we do that, I want to tell you about Acre Gold. Gold is the original store of value. It's the money of kings.
Mm-hmm.
The world is wacky. Who knows what's coming to our future? What Acre Gold does is it allows you to invest in gold with a subscription model. When you accrue enough money into your subscription account, they send you this wacky thing, 2.5 grams of gold.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great amount of gold for the seasoned investor or someone who's just getting started out investing in gold. Precious metals should be a part of everyone's portfolio. That's just my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You can click our link down in the description down below and join Acre Gold today.
Gold is up this week, so it's good.
Awesome. So this next story, we did a story not too long ago about Samsung dropping nearly $18 billion to build a chip factory out in Taylor, Texas, it was Taylor, right? Not Tyler.
Just outside of Austin.
It's just outside of Austin. It's still Williamson County, which blew my mind. It's like I didn't know Wilco was that big.
Mm-hmm.
And now Intel is spending $20 billion to build a chip factory in Ohio. And it seems timely to a lot of people who are casual observers of the news who go, oh, chip shortage, building chip factory, they're going to fix the chip shortage. It's not how that works. I don't think these factories will be supplying chips for 3 years.
Well, no, at least 3 years. I mean, because it's not even the first of the facilities isn't even expected to open until late 2025. And when they say late 2025, that's without any disruption, right? Whatever, and that kind of stuff. So, look, there's always a spin when it comes to counties and cities and news and all this kind of stuff. Obviously, they want to paint a picture. Right? We call it politics, right? And the picture being painted is, guess what? People in that city and county and stuff like that came out and said, hey, we want to be competitive, right? With national security and chip shortages and high prices of cars. And this will help with all of that because those are all hot button issues right now. But the chances are there won't be a car chip shortage by the time this rolls out. Not that this factory is even going to make those. And guess what? Samsung isn't planning to make those in Taylor, Texas either. We said as part of that story. Both of these factories are going to be built to make top-of-the-line chips for the top-of-the-line products moving forward. They're not making brake chips to go, that's this chip shortage in cars, right? People go, well, there's a chip shortage for cars, and they think brains and no, we're talking about for your brakes and for these dumb little things that are used off of 10, 15-year-old technology.
Yes.
That companies don't want to make anymore. That's the chip shortage. It's not brand new Intel processors.
Right. So let me ask you a pseudo-political question.
Sure.
Do you think, what's that?
I said sure.
Okay. Do you think the former president and some of his opinions on things, do you think that is what has driven investment into U.S. chip manufacturing? Or do you think it's simply, hey, it's, we need to have some of this stuff onshore. It just makes sense for the supply chain. Because I don't feel like there was this much interest in building chips in the United States since the early dawn of Silicon Valley, which is how Silicon Valley really got its name and how it got started was microchip manufacturing.
Right. Well, and they're trying to call this Silicon Heartland, which is what they're trying to get to catch on, which it's not. It's a dumb name.
They had a name for Dallas too in the 80s. What was it? Silicon something or other? That was stupid.
Here's the point, and the answer to your question. I think it's less about politics and more about business. The fact is over the last several years,
right,
America and the biggest country over in Asia are your two largest consumers in the world.
Okay. You won't even say the name anymore.
Are the two largest consumers in the world, right? Right. And when you look up until this last couple of years and all the shortage of products and, right. For decades we've been going toward this globalist outlook that, hey, I can manufacture the entire world's needs of Intel X, chips y, and Z, in Taiwan, right? Right now 90% of advanced chips in the world, 90% are made in Taiwan.
Right. Now, I didn't know that.
So 90% are made in Taiwan of advanced chips. Now, that is fine if in a globalist economy. However, when you look as a country, right, the United States of America.
I think what you mean to say is global economy. Globalist economy has other implications.
Global economy, right? You go, okay, I need these products. And these products are being made somewhere on the world, right? Yeah. And we all have access to them, right? The problem, though, that has been created in the last 2 or 3 years, especially by these two major consumer countries, is that, okay, wait a minute. What if we don't like each other or we don't always get along? And then all of a sudden, I no longer have access for some reason to that product. And what that is from a business standpoint, right? Opportunity. Right. These companies, which Samsung is not based in the United States.
No, they're Korean.
And this company's not based in the United States, right? Right. They go, wait a minute. America wants to have access to its own chips.
Right.
So either America is going to create their own chip manufacturers, or let's go take their money because we're going to invest. And let's say it's $20 billion. The city's putting up another $1 billion, right, to get them to do it.
Intel is an American company, so.
Yeah. Well, okay, not entirely. My point, though, is again, it's just good business to go. Because right now, Intel is paying that company in Taiwan to make these processors.
Correct.
Right? So by bringing that money back here, it's still a good business decision. And look, they won't move at all. It's not. They're not going to stop using Taiwan. Taiwan's not slowing down on production. No. And this can be. It's a $20 billion product right now, but they've said it could be up to $100 billion. Correct. Right? If depending on how things go and government subsidies and yada yada yada.
And now I like to remind people that a manufacturing company out of Asia promised to build a huge facility in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And a certain person who was president at the time championed this as a great success.
Ooh, you're walking that line of us being a political show talking about that one, but go ahead.
And all I'm saying is the reality of what happened with that factory is they forced a bunch of people not to build homes on a piece of land, and then nothing happened.
Not only nothing happened, but the people in charge of that walked away with a lot of people's money. And
good for that.
That is, anyway. And that was a debacle. I don't think. Look, you've got two big names behind this, Samsung and Intel. Yeah. I don't think that's something that's going to happen here. I think they'll spend at least what they're initially saying they'll spend.
More.
Now, whether the other stuff comes in, that's just good old-fashioned business. If it takes off and it's successful, they'll invest more, like any good business would. If it doesn't, they'll keep it the $20 billion that they agreed to spend and go on about their business, right?
No, I think this is, first of all, I have a lot of weird ideas about economics and so on. I think this is good. I don't think this is bad. I think this is the part of it that makes me barf a little is the county or the city's putting up a bunch of money. That doesn't make any sense to me. But listen,
that's true in business all over.
That's what it takes to get the factory, though. If you want your factory in Ohio instead of the factory going to, you name the other place, because who doesn't want a factory in their town now? You have to put up that kind of capitalization. And the city who didn't win, they said, well, we'll spend $700 million. For instance, I think it's $120 million is what Williamson County is putting up to build infrastructure in Taylor to support the factory. So a lot of these big investments are not made without public capital being spent in investment. And that is interesting to think about from an economics perspective, wouldn't you think?
I think you're going to see more and more of that, because you're going to see
any other way.
Decentralization of these kind of things, because you can go out to a town like Taylor, right? That 30 years ago, 40 years ago, there was a point 100 years ago where Taylor was a bustling town, right? For its whatever, but it was way outside of Austin, right? So it wasn't close enough to anything, but it was a bustling town. And as Austin grew as a city, Taylor shrank, right? It got smaller and smaller. You move into the town, right? Where now you've got all of this inexpensive land and a lot of it.
Right.
And you can build essentially a city, right?
Yes.
You can build a plant.
These factories are going to look like cities in many ways.
Right, because what they do is the Amazon model. It's what Elon Musk is doing with his SpaceX, right? SpaceX down in right and stuff like that. He's building a city. I'm going to build a company here, which has to have employees, and then I'm going to build a community of houses around to offer nice housing. I'm not going to rely on Taylor's housing, current housing. I'm going to build communities because I'm going to force that as part of the deal. I'm going to build new roads.
That's where he is. Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. In this, in this kind of stuff, we're going to build houses. I mean, you're talking about, I don't know exactly where New Albany, Ohio is, but I would guess that it's probably much like Taylor, right?
Yeah.
And that it's an older city.
Probably,
The average person that lives there is probably on the older end, much like Taylor. So they're not going to be the ones employed by this. They're going to bring them in, and the average salary, according to Intel, is probably going to be about $135,000 a year. So they're bringing in high-level employees. They're going to have to build houses for these people. So there's a lot of money to be made. And this is actually what used to happen a long time ago. Railroads did this, right? Hey, my railroad's coming through here. Railroads used to do this. My railroad is going through this part of the country. I'm going to buy a bunch of land because I know there's going to be a bunch of houses being built. And it was a way for someone to make a lot of money from a bunch of different ways.
Yeah, they used to be called company towns, right? A company would show up, they'd buy up a small little town, and in some way, I support that. I think that's good. I think that's I think that's a better means of development than going to, for instance, in our fair town, Austin, you pay taxes for the roads and then they build a bike lane. I don't want a bike anyway. I digress.
Well, look, this is actually how we went from sea to shining sea, right? Yeah. Is these towns were built by these companies that went in and said, hey, I want this to be Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Steel City. Yeah. I'm going to make steel for every building that we build around the United States in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and they become the Steel City, right?
So, what is interesting is, there's an old saying, it's from the Bible, there's nothing new under the sun, right? And everything old becomes new again. And what I think is fascinating is, I'm seeing my friends who granddaddy or, their parents moved from rural, originally from the Midwest. They moved from rural Wisconsin and they moved up to the life in the big city of the Minneapolis, St. Paul. And now their kids are saying, I don't have to live here. I can take my job. And now they're literally moving back to grandpa's farm because grandpa's gone to be part of the dirt now. He's part of the fertilizer. And so they're like, why would I live here in town and have a $350,000 house? I can sell it and own a $200,000 farm. And I work from home, homeschool my kids, or my kids do school online. And I'm seeing this weird transition back to smaller towns and manufacturing like this. So New Albany, Ohio is well outside of Columbus, but it looks like it's probably a 50-minute drive to Columbus. And with companies like Kroger and others building up infrastructure to do grocery delivery, right? You're going to have all sorts of mobilized infrastructure where Kroger might not have a storefront in this little town. But
they may not have to because they'll deliver to there.
Correct. They'll have a warehouse where they keep 100 of the top products in that warehouse. And if you want a different product, well, the truck comes in every Tuesday or every Thursday or whatever it is. And so this centralization to big cities, I think that's ending, right? And I think that's ending really fast. And I think everybody's going to sprawl back out and I don't think it's going to be urban sprawl where it's going to be suburbs and stuff like that. I think we're going to see more company towns. I think we're going to see more stuff like this where it's like, hey, I'm going to go work and live in some town with where the Intel factory is and make $150,000 a year and live in a house that costs $210,000 that I fixed up and looks like it's from HGTV.
Well, or was just built last year because Intel came to town, right?
Correct.
I can go, and because here's what has happened in the last decade with some of these places like this where a big company has come in, even if it was a suburb, maybe it was a tiny suburb, and this has happened a lot around in Colorado, right? And stuff like that around Denver in these smaller towns. This big company comes in, but when they come in, they make these deals with the city, and this is where the city's money comes in, not only in tax breaks or whatever, but they force the cities to create infrastructure for those.
Right.
So like in a place like Taylor, this big company comes in, Samsung, and goes, hey, if you want us to be here, here's what's required by the city. You're going to have to invest in high-speed internet. You're going to have to invest in this, this, and this, and this, because that's the only way they get people to move there to fill those jobs. And then all of a sudden, you're moving to a new old town that feels like an old town, but it's got brand new houses, it's got brand new high-speed internet, it's got all these things that currently Taylor does not have, right?
And you know who I feel bad for is the old people in these towns who have lived there forever. And here's all this new innovation coming, and they have ancillary benefits of like, hey, you're going to have cooler restaurants, better grocery stores, all this stuff that's going to benefit them. But their little town is now dead. You killed it.
Well, they moved. Look, I deal with a lot of these people in real estate. They moved to an old town that still exists out there. If they're owners, the ones that you really feel bad for, that have lived in Taylor for 50 years but have rented the entire time, that now get pushed out.
No upside.
Those are the ones because they've got no upside, right? They've lived in Taylor their entire lives, but they don't own anything.
Do you know a single person in Taylor that has rented for anything more than 3 years?
Not off the top of my head, but it happens. There are a lot of people that live in a place like Taylor or on the north side of Georgetown, right? That these are older folks that do rent because they've lived there forever. And when they moved there for the 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it was still middle of nowhere and affordable. And now they can't rent and they get pushed out.
And so I think about those situations and I go, the only reason I would go live in any place like that is because it's cheap and I would be focused on owning, not renting. But that's just me.